Hi, good evening, and welcome to Unsuited. Unsuited is a talk series that is powered by IDEX Legal and the Grey Matter. When Rhodes set up the scholarship that he did, he essentially wanted it to, of course, be available to students who had outstanding academic records. But in addition to that, he needed these scholars to be kind, unselfish. They needed to have an ability to lead and essentially come from a space of deep empathy and sympathy with a desire to protect, to essentially protect the weak. Well, we have not one but two such Rhodes scholars with us this evening. And the two of them went off, they left India as lawyers, only to return as doctors, not medical practitioners, but they both came back with a PhD each. They returned to the homeland to set up an independent think tank that we popularly know as Vidhi Centre for Legal Policy. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Arghya Sengupta and Dr. Dhvani Mehta this evening, our guests for today. Hi, Dhvani. Hi, Arghya.
Hi, Tanisha. Thanks very much for having us.
Thank you both for being here.
A real pleasure.
Thanks. Vikas, the stage is yours.
Hi, Dhvani. Hi, Argo.
Hi, Vikas. Good to see you.
And thanks for giving up your Sunday afternoon for us to be live with us.
The pleasure is all yours.
All right. So we're going to get into really a bit about the whole thing here is to really uncover people's personal backgrounds and get beyond the technical excellence to really uncover the people behind the law. So we're going to kind of dive into your respective backgrounds and initially, why did you decide to study law in the first place? So Dhvani, let me go with you first.
Sure. Honestly, I mean, I did have a lawyer in the family. My grandfather was a lawyer. He specialized in labor law. And after the 10th grade, I thought that that was something I would probably be good at because I liked writing and I liked speaking. And my grandfather always had a fund of really interesting stories. So it seemed like, law would be an exciting profession to jump into. But honestly, midway through 12th grade, I had a change of heart. I decided I wanted to try my hand at medicine instead. And I appeared for the entrance examination and didn't do well enough to get into a college in Bombay. Then it was back to the original plan, which was to go to law college in Bombay at Government Law College in Churchgate. So, I mean, I think there wasn't a lot of deep thinking behind why I wanted to do the law. Like, any other middle class person, I wanted to have a professional degree. I knew the law. It was something that I was somewhat familiar with. And I thought I'd be decent at it. So honestly, I didn't have very high ideals when I decided to enter government law college.
Yeah, I think as kids, when we're growing up as Indian kids, it's either going to be engineering, being a doctor, or a lawyer, or an accountant. That was the other option.
Yeah. I knew I'd be hopeless at some of the others. It's certainly engineering and accountancy.
But Dhvani, you went ahead and got that doctor degree nonetheless, right? Like you've got that doctor fixed.
Not the right one. Not the right one.
Doesn't matter. So if someone comes in for a surgery, just be honest enough to say, hey, can't do. That's all you need to do. The rest of the time, we don't need to make any disclosures.
That.
What about yourself? How did you end up getting into law?
Again, by accident. Actually, I don't have a lawyer in the family at all, going many generations up, as long as I can remember, certainly. So it was one of these things that, as in my mother, when I was in class 7 or 8, had heard about the National Law School, Bangalore. And she said, that's the place that you should think about going to. And we'd, of course, have not heard of that place really, to be very honest, because some couple of people from school had gotten there. So when it came around to class 12 and, I'd just given my board exams, I was confident. So I think my mother had brought these. There used to be a book, a really thick book, which was question papers from the last 15 years of National Law School entrance exams. And she'd bought it and I used to flip through it and I went and gave the exam. And as luck would have it, I got in. I just squeaked in, actually. I was ranked 53 out of 57. And I decided that, so I thought that, okay, hey, this is something that seems interesting. And then I spoke to a lot of people. I was otherwise going to go and do economics at St. Stephen's College, which is what I've always wanted to do. But I thought about it and I felt like I wanted to do it not because I really wanted to do economics, but because it seemed like the cool thing to do at that time, and my dad had done it. And so, but when I thought about it, spoke to some people, everyone said that, yeah, you should really think about doing law at the National Law School. And yeah, as in I ended up doing law, and I haven't regretted it. I think I would have made a terrible economist. I'm not interested in most things that have to do with numbers. But yeah, I certainly think that I'm a better lawyer than I would have been an economist. So I think, like most good things, it started off with an accident.
Yeah, and then so while you're doing you're at government law school and NLS, then you also then took the further step of kind of applying for the Rhodes Scholarship, and moving to Oxford. So what was that? What was behind that kind of thinking of taking it even further?
That might have been a bit different for the two of us. As in at NLS, very frankly, as in if you were a student who was doing well, it was almost expected that you would apply for the Rhodes Scholarship. As in it would be, you would have to be a real original mind at the age of 20 to say that, I'm close to top of my batch, and I'm not going to apply for the Rhodes Scholarship. So I think it was A, what was expected, and B, I actually really wanted to study further. I felt that the 5 years of law school in Bangalore were really the most enjoyable years of my life. I really had a great time, both in terms of growing up as a professional, growing as a professional, and growing up as a human being. So I think I wanted to extend that. I wasn't ready to go out and start working. And what better place to do it than in Oxford? And if there was a scholarship to boot that would give you a healthy stipend and burnish your reputation, then I'm not complaining. So I think that's how I ended up applying, and it turned out quite well. I don't know, Dhvani, I think, has a slightly different version of events.
No, I mean, it's similar. As in, once you are at undergrad, law college, I did want to study further. I did want, and that's not just because I loved the law, but because I thought it was important to go abroad and broaden my horizons. And so I was very keen on doing a postgraduate degree. And as Arghya said, of course, you do think of Oxford as sort of the pinnacle of academic achievement. So I really wanted to get in there, and the Rhodes Scholarship was a way to do that. As in, honestly, I can't say I really thought of the scholarship independently of a degree at Oxford, or although of course, we encourage people now who apply for it to think of it in that way. So it was a route to getting to Oxford, and again, being part of a group of really impressive individuals who I'd only read about in books. In fact, the first time I read about the Rhodes Scholarship was in a book by Eric Siegel on doctors, ironically. So it just struck you as this very mythical, hard to achieve, hard to attain thing. And yeah, it was very aspirational to want to try and get it. So primarily, I saw it as a way to get to Oxford and continue my education.
Super. And then when you were at Oxford, obviously, then you started getting these kind of ideas about the legal system in India. And I think some of the kind of early seeds of what later becomes the Vidhi Centre kind of sprouted there. So how did you get from studying at Oxford, with, like you said, great minds in the kind of law fraternity there? How did the kind of the seeds of Vidhi come about, and what you wanted to do next?
I think it came about because we had a lot of free time. Very frankly, there were a lot of great minds, and certainly we spent quite a bit of time with them. But a doctoral degree can be extremely isolating. It can be extremely, extremely difficult in phases, particularly in England at a time like this, when it's sort of dark and the days are finishing at 4 o'clock. As in it's miserable, actually, as in there's no other way of describing it. So we really needed to do something productive with our time, and I think that's the brutal truth. It also happened to be the case that at that point of time, as we first started dabbling in what the process of law making in India was like. We, as lawyers, our training is primarily to do with courts, as in how do courts interpret statutes, how do courts do reasoning in their judgments. But we really hadn't thought about how law is made. And at that point of time, as there was the Indo-US nuclear deal had been signed, and there was a legislation in Parliament, and that's where we got in. There was a lot of free time that we had, and that's where we got interested in saying that, hey, why don't we try and use some of this free time to see if we can improve some of these laws in India. And I think that that's really the core of the idea, that using that time that a doctoral degree gave you, and the skills that you'd acquired along the way, to try and do something that sort of improves law in the country. So that, I think, is how it really sort of, that's really the genesis of it.
Yeah. And what about you, Dhvani? Because obviously, was it because of the environment you were in at that time that you were allowed to think like that? Because that's not. I can't imagine in India, many 20-year-olds saying, "How do we look at the law, how it's written, and can we do something better about it?" So, what helped kind of sparked you to kind of think along those lines as well?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think kids now, I mean, law students in India are definitely thinking very innovatively and as in have many more interesting ideas than we did at that time. But yes, you're right. As in being at Oxford sort of, again, opened up the avenue of career paths that I had thought were possible. So, initially you'd have thought that you'd go and work in a law firm or litigate. And now it was clear that there were different kinds of things that you could do and perhaps tailor a career for yourself that suited your personality and skills the best. So for me, actually, and again, the idea of Vidhi doesn't necessarily, I mean, it came primarily from Arghya, but I bought into it because I think partly because of my association with a group at Oxford called Oxford Pro Bono Publico, where we were a group of law students who got together to provide legal research assistance to a variety of organizations and lawyers who were fighting cases across the world, or to UN bodies or panels or submissions to Parliament. So two of the projects that I worked on while I was there were one on providing submissions to the draft Prevention of Sexual Harassment at the Workplace bill that was pending in the Indian Parliament, and also doing an independent research project on thinking about how pre-legislative participatory processes in India could be strengthened. So I found that work very satisfying. It felt it felt like a good combination of the things I was good at. It involved legal research, but it was not legal research in the abstract, which was what my doctoral degree felt like at that time. It was research that was going towards something that felt like it would have a positive change. So that felt very gratifying. And then when Arghya sort of came up with the idea of doing, starting up Vidhi and doing work like this on a full-time basis, that felt right. As in that felt, I mean, it felt like, oh, okay, perhaps there is an avenue to do what I like on a permanent basis once I leave Oxford. So for me, that was really the genesis of thinking about how Vidhi could be a full-time thing.
Yeah. And then Arghya, what helps you kind of scale it up? Because obviously you're at Oxford, you think, let's have a look at Indian law, how it's written, but you wouldn't have had many kind of role models, especially in India, to kind of benchmark yourself against. So how did you go from, okay, you're at Oxford, you got a lot of free time, you're debating, you do a critique of the nuclear bill. How did it go from that to saying, this is what I want to dedicate, time, your time and energy to?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think if I were to simply summarize that, there was a combination of things. One is that laws in India could do with some serious improvement. I think that is as lawyers, and I think most of the audience here is primarily lawyers, and we know how badly drafted laws can be. Sometimes it's deliberate, but a lot of times it's essentially because of oversight. And so, one is that laws needed improvement. And number two, personally speaking, I always wanted to be a lawyer who could give back, who wanted to make a difference on the ground. If it hadn't been for Vidhi, I was pretty certain that I would come back and litigate, because that's what lawyers who who have a social bent of mind tend to do. So a combination of these two things meant that when we did this nuclear liability stuff the first time in 2009 and 2010, that time we were sort of 25, 26-year-old graduate students. We had made a submission before the Standing Committee of Parliament. One thing led to another, and we were called before the Standing Committee of Parliament. And that kind of was for the first time that this middle class myth that most of us in India tend to have, that politicians are good for nothing and bureaucrats are people who are essentially interested in obstructing things and not doing them. That got busted, and I realized that they were interested in doing the right thing. They needed help, and we were there to provide that help. And lo and behold, we made many suggestions, and 3 or 4 of them became the law of the land. As in the next month, they were passed, and they became the law of the land. And so, as a graduate student, it was really gratifying. But as I've said to you earlier, as a citizen, this was really scary. That it seems that there was a real gap, and so we worked on we worked on several more projects actually during that time, as in like we did for the nuclear liability bill. There was something on public procurement, there was something on judicial standards, prevention of torture, and then we felt that there was a gap in the system, that policy ideas don't translate into good legislation. And as lawyers, we felt that there was a role that we could play to fill that gap. We had domain expertise in certain areas, and we were willing to sort of put in our time and energy in order to do this full time. So I think that it was this combination that gave us really the wings to fly. And of course there were many other factors, and I'm happy to go into those. But I think, simply put, it was a combination of the fact that there was a system that was really broken and that needed improving, and here was a set of people who were willing to do it.
Oh, I just froze in. And then, Dhvani, what was that like for you? I mean, again, as students in your 20s, to then put a critique of the nuclear liability bill and get response as well. I mean, that's incredible. And then, like Arghya saying, to have some of that implemented. I mean, that's like, you can imagine .com kids thinking, they've got a great idea, they got funding, right? So how was that as a sensation, for you guys?
Sure. I mean, I wasn't part of the team that made these submissions to Parliament. So I think Arghya and a group of other friends had got together to do that at that time. So I didn't have that satisfaction. But when Arghya did tell me about Vidhi as an idea, and then used this example of the nuclear liability bill, that sort of convinced me that yes, this is something that had scope, and this is something that we could possibly attempt to do on a full-time basis, as in there was a concrete example of something like this having worked. Because honestly, I mean, I would never have thought of doing something like this on my own. So it helped that there was someone who tried this, Arghya and his other classmates. And I was willing to sort of, because the idea was so appealing and so, the work seemed so interesting, I was willing to sort of risk taking this leap into the unknown. And as long as Arghya could sort of assure that we would have enough funding for me to survive on a reasonable salary in Delhi, that was fine by me. So honestly, that's all I was really thinking. As in, I wanted, it was nice to have some proof of concept of the idea, although this was a very small one. And the assurance that, yes, we would have the monetary ability to be able to sustain ourselves, in which case I was all in.
Yeah. And again, Arghya, that's a big one, because like you said, you would have had a lot of batchmates and peers that were going the corporate law route or litigation and earning, some of them earning sizable kind of fees and salaries to, when they're in the law. And for you guys, setting up a kind of social enterprise to look at the Indian legal system, I can't imagine being a very kind of remunerative, option. So like Dhvani's saying, the next thing was the funding thing, and how do you fund this concept, especially when it's a brand new idea. It's not like you're setting up a .com that's going to scale up and have a kind of sellout to it. So how did you then go about getting people to invest in your idea?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is that this is something that we always say to people who are interviewing with Vidhi, because we get a lot of applications now for folks who want to interview with Vidhi, and there's always this question of remuneration that comes up. And so I've always said that there is a trade-off often between remuneration and work satisfaction. And what we can't give you in terms of remuneration, we hope that we can give you in terms of work satisfaction and having the satisfaction that the work that you have done is really making an impact in improving people's lives on the ground. And I think that is what it was for us. As in, this is not something that I make up. The fact is that when we were starting this up, as in, it was in some sense like it was a shoestring operation, because we had to, okay, we were interested in doing this and all the fancy stuff that I've said, that, there was this great idea that laws were broken and needed to change. All of that is good, but it's not as if we can land up from our fancy Oxford degrees and saying that we are Rhodes scholars, come back to Delhi and tell people that, hey, we are now here to help you. Why don't you give us lots of money so that you can, you can allow us to help you? So it obviously doesn't work like that. So there were a couple of years where it was essentially about raising the funds. At that point of time, I had become a lecturer in Oxford, and that made things quite easy, to be very honest. That opened a lot of doors, certainly in Delhi. There is a fascination, particularly amongst the legal fraternity in India, with Oxbridge, and I used that fascination for all it was worth. So if someone were to tell me what's the biggest gain of the Rhodes Scholarship, it's or Oxford, as in it's perhaps that. But no, that's just kidding. As in a very material sense, perhaps it was that. But there were a couple of years in 2012 and 13 where it was essentially about fundraising, and we had to try and raise the funds in order to make this work. So thankfully, as I said, again, Oxford gives us a lot of free time, and so instead of writing submissions to standing committees in this free time, as in we're making frequent trips to Delhi, Bombay, and Bangalore to try and raise funds so that we could start up. And we were very fortunate that we got a great set of funders right from the outset, who are all with us today. That's Mr. Vikram Lal, Rohini and Nandan Nilikini, Mohandas Pai, Anand Mahindra, and the Godreges, who believed in us when we were an idea. And we got a great board together led by Dr. Ashok Ganguly, who was a former chairman of Unilever. And these were people who really bought into the idea itself. And they felt that governance needed improvement and law had a great role to play in that. So 2012 and 13 were hard because we had to convince these people to back an idea which had, as you rightly said, Vikas, had not been tried in India, and they did. And we put together a small amount of funding, as I was certainly not an entrepreneur, so I really didn't have any marketing skills to speak of. What was worse is that I was a doctoral student, so I quickly realized that the skills that are needed to be a doctoral student, of being cautious and caveating your sentences, is exactly the antithesis of the skills that you need to be a good marketer, which would require you to advertise yourself and sell yourself a little bit better. But those 2 years were basically about fundraising, and we managed to put together funds for about 3 years to have a small team of about 6 people. And in December 2013, almost 7 years to the day, we began out of my friend Alok's living room in Delhi.
Wonderful. And you started off with about 6, 7 people in 2013, you say. Today, what is the team strength like?
I think, Dhvani, the team strength is about 75 in
Yeah,
Delhi and Bangalore.
it includes lawyers and administrative staff, and we do have a few non-lawyers as well who work in a research capacity. But yeah, across 2 offices, around 75 people.
Oh, wow. That is absolutely impressive. So you are feeding easily 75 families and more.
Our funders are, yeah.
Your funders are. I like how specific you are, Dhvani. You're like, hey, this has got nothing to do with us. Yeah, fair. So, obviously you've worked with, I think Vikas is back. So you've worked with different kinds of, government, like you said, bureaucrats. You've worked with politicians, industrialists. We're sure you have some very exciting stories that you've probably had to experience, on the positive and the not so great versions of both, having interacted with these people. Do you want to share a few anecdotes with us, the both of you, in terms of experience? If anything funny happened, anything that really surprising happened?
Yeah, there are a few. As in, so I think the as in I can't think of any as in straight up, but one of the early questions that we got asked, as in which as in happened very frequently, was that the first time you entered a meeting, as in people said, "How old are you?" You know, and yeah, as in, to be fair, as in at that time I was in my 20s, and I quickly realized, one, that maturity is not deemed synonymous with age, but thankfully, and this was in that first standing committee presentation, uh, the question for me stopped at "How old are you?" The question for my colleague, as in who was presenting with me, who was a woman, was, "Why you not married yet?" And we were like, "Oh, whoa, whoa, okay." So this is so this was interesting, because we realized, as in that as in without being facetious, as in, I think we realized that this was in some sense going to be difficult terrain, because we were going to be constantly questioned on the basis of our age. Women would constantly be questioned on the basis of the fact that they were not performing stereotypical roles that certain 70-year-old politicians would have expected them to perform. And we realized that our task was cut out. And I think that was one of the early experiences that sort of gave us a sense of what was going to come. I don't know whether Dhvani had any experiences. Hmm.
In my the only interesting, so I don't work as much as Orgo does with government officials, but yeah, in the initial years of Vidhi, even I went for several meetings with bureaucrats, primarily bureaucrats, and discovered to my utter dismay that I was expected to drink a cup of chai at every meeting, so which I absolutely abhor. Like, I do not like the boiled Indian milky chai. I don't drink tea at all, but I realized very quickly that I was liable to give great offense if I did not drink that little cup or mug of
Milky tea.
tea at these meetings. So now, over these last 7 years, it's evolved. So now your bureaucrat will ask you whether you want green tea or not. So they've developed evolved sensibilities
That's
towards
true.
tea drinking. Otherwise, it was always that standard milky cup. But no, listen, so that was one interesting experience about being a part of government offices. The other for me, as in, was just I was just amazed at the kind of access that you were able to get in government. As in, of course, it can be difficult to get a meeting, but once you're there, it's like any other office, really, and people are willing to speak to you and talk to you and engage with you. And for the most part, we've had really positive experiences with bureaucrats. Sure, you'll get the odd cranky one once in a way, and you'll have a meeting that gets over in a couple of minutes and leave you bewildered as to, okay, what just happened here. But for me, as in, the most eye-opening experience has been to sort of penetrate, be a part of this world that I thought was so alien, and to really get an insight into how this kind of functioning happens, how people in government think, understand what their constraints are. And that really has been, like, it's a really interesting experience, as in what their, and then you get to learn what goes on inside their minds, what are the pressures that bureaucrats themselves face, what are the various, as in the intricate hierarchies within the bureaucracy, the various designations. Honestly, I still don't think I remember the difference between an additional secretary and an under secretary and a joint secretary sometimes, and there are so many more. So it was sort of learning this new vocabulary of government as well, which was a very interesting experience for me.
But on that point, as in, because Dhwani made the point about access, as in now I remember a very early incident in Shastri Bhavan, which is one of these fantastic government offices where you have files from the floor to the ceiling, and where it's a Herculean task just to enter. That's only because of just sheer incompetence at some level, that someone has to call someone and that person doesn't call that person, and then your car number is not there. And so one accessing that building is extremely difficult. So I remember one occasion when I had to climb over some people's heads and say, okay, my pass is here, and this was very early and I didn't know at all as to how to do things like this. And so with some great difficulty I managed to secure a pass, and then I had to show my pass in at another place, and the guard said something that you don't have a pass. At which point of time I saw that everybody moved apart while a family of monkeys walked into the building. Okay, so and so it became clear to me at that time that access is difficult for citizens of the country, but not monkeys of the country, to reach the government buildings. No pun intended.
Yeah, Shastri Bhavan is infested with monkeys. So every time I've had to work late there, anytime after 6 p.m., I always have the secretary will ensure that I have someone to escort me out of the building with a lathi to keep monkeys at bay.
Unbelievable.
It's a very common feature.
Argo, when you said monkeys, I thought you were referring to politicians.
No pun. No.
Mandarins, yeah.
The real simian variety. The real simian variety. As in, there are many of those.
That explains the functioning of the space sometimes, I guess. Sorry.
And then there's a government employee called a langur. As in, the langur is a government employee who's, I've learned all this over 7 years, who's used to chase the monkeys away. And then there is an official post in the government of India called langur attender. Okay, so there are attenders for langurs whose job is to ensure the langur comes in at the right time and chases the monkey. So,
oh wow, this is fantastic. Okay,
this was a real return from Oxford, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So maybe we've got Jungle Book law being written then. Hence some of the kind of issues with the writing.
This is truly interesting. Okay, thank you both for just sharing as honestly as you did all about the journey around Vidhi. This brings us to the end of our first segment, which we call the interview round. We're now going to move on to some more fun and games, and hope that you will not over intellectualize this process, because PhD, Rhodes scholars and all that. So
spend most of our time with monkeys, so you won't really.
They
might be more intellectual than us, so no offense.
So then Vikas and I are bearable. If you can handle the monkeys, you can handle us. We're grateful to the monkeys. So moving on to the next segment, which we call Word Snake. What essentially happens there is you both are sent a list of 7 words each. You have to use the words you have in the same order, okay? And you have to conversationally sneak them in. So it has to look like you're having a very organic conversation, and you've ensured that these words given to the both of you respectively slip in, right? So we're going to send the words across. Let me just give us a moment on the logistics to be sure if you both received your words. Dhvani, I will send you your words.
Okay.
Okay, so Dhvani, your words are across. Argo, have you received yours?
You've sent them on my phone, is it?
Yes, on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
It will come to both of you over WhatsApp. So just check your WhatsApp number.
Right.
I haven't got it yet, but I'm sure.
Okay,
you
My husband's sending it to you.
Yep, I have it.
And you do one word at a time. So it's not, you don't run through the whole words in one go.
Okay.
One word, the next person do one word, then you do one word.
But I don't know what the other person's word is, so I don't know whether they've done it or not.
You'll stop. Well, each of you stop after one word, as in once you've covered it in your conversation.
Sure.
Also, don't hijack it, okay? Like, don't go pick up your list and be like, tuck, 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 my words are done now. Now the other can go figure.
No, not at all. No, but because we were talking about government offices, actually the other thing that you get, as in we noticed this change actually. That was in 2013 when we started, as in, it was always that rubbish chai that Dhvani talked about, and there were some biscuits with that. And from 2014, that biscuit got replaced by a dhokla. Okay, and this is actually true that in every government office you got that. The chai still remained quite terrible, But there was a dhokla, which actually I really liked because it was much better than the biscuit. So I was very happy for that change. But it was also a subtle sign that the times had also changed.
Changed, yeah.
Unfortunately, as a Gujarati, I didn't think the dhokla quality was up to scratch.
I was just going to ask you, Dhvani, what did the Mehta and you think? Look, we have to wait. We have to wait for a time where they evolve to wine and cheese and crackers. Then we know that the Indian government has arrived.
Yeah, no, they had some health drives in between. So instead of dhoklas, then you will get fruits in your boxes. So it could be an orange or an apple or a banana, depending on whatever fruit, I don't know, the monkeys are likely to avoid. So
wonderful. Okay, so you both have received your words, we hope.
Yes.
Argo, will you check now?
Tanisha, they've already started
the
conversation.
Yeah. We received it. We started
Tanisha,
this also.
Started.
Yeah.
Let's find out. They're very slow.
Oh, I'm part of this for some weird reason. Okay, excuse me. I'm going to go on mute.
Oh, so we're supposed to just continue the conversation now, right?
Yeah. So these government offices also, as in one of the things is that what we've always felt is that the place itself is really beautiful, and as in I've sort of spent a lot of time there and just thinking about, because of the Central Vista project which is going to happen now, as in what's going to happen of it, and I think it would be good to indulge in one of my long lost pastimes of photography and take some pictures of these buildings like Shastri Bhavan and Nirman Bhavan, which are going to get demolished.
Jesus, Orgo, you haven't really, as in there are very few hobbies that you pursue full time at all. So as in this seems a bit unrealistic.
No, but see, this is where I get into the doghouse. For having said something that I shouldn't have said. But no, as in yes, Dhvani is right. As in I think for a long time, as in I haven't really pursued any hobbies. As in the weekends are usually spent watching football, and especially now during Corona, as in it's just sitting at home and doing nothing. So yes, as in I really think I should get back to something.
Yeah, and maybe exercise, at least for you, has always been like. I mean, it's been. I don't think the lockdown has changed anything very much, because it's not as if physical activity has been a strong suit. So getting you to indulge in any physical activity is like, it's like getting you to climb a mountain, which is as unlikely as getting you to go to the gym. So.
But the only thing I'm happy about is that the one physical activity that Dhvani doesn't force me to do, despite being a Gujarati, is engage in some garba. With wearing those ridiculous things that men wear. It looks fun on TV. I'm happy to watch it on Kaipoche, but that was one of my big fears, that I shouldn't have to do any of this. But thankfully, as in we've remained far away from wherever that happens, or during that Navratri, we've never been there. So that means that at least one kind of physical exercise that doesn't happen is the garba, or because I actually don't like any form of physical exercise. So I'll just put it out there.
Yeah, as in it's this lockdown has been primarily about finding new shows and serials and movies to watch. So revisiting old favorites, or finding newer things to do. So I don't know, what's the latest thing we've been watching, Orgo?
I think now we started watching The Undoing. Which is this Hugh Grant and Nicole Kidman. It's a sort of unsettling murder mystery, which is just quite interesting. But because we've gone back to older things as well, and like I caught her, though corporate law was never for me. I went back and watched a couple of episodes of Suits. It's not like it's not like I really ever thought that I could be Harvey Specter, for more reasons than one. But yeah, it's a serial that always gives. Like there's always something that you can take away from it. Though that world is certainly not mine.
For me, I've been really binging on Junior Master Chef. There's some really adorable, precocious children, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious type children who are whipping up these supercalifragilisticexpialidocious type dishes and wowing the judges. So it's been a nice that's been a very fun thing to watch at this time.
Yeah, because actually the lockdown has pretty much been about work, and because of work from home. And I think this is something that everybody has felt, as in these boundaries have completely blurred.
Hmm.
So essentially, there is nothing that is sacrosanct anymore. So it's been, working a little bit and then TV and then working again. As in the only thing that, as I was telling you, Tanisha, that I've managed to keep sacrosanct is nap time on Sundays. Okay, successfully done till this Sunday. Yeah. But of course, there's a very good reason for this, and I'm very happy to do this. But the Sunday afternoon sleep is one thing that I've, I've, I've held on to from the time I was in college, actually. So I've always slept in the afternoon. As in my time period for sleeping have certainly increased a little bit during the lockdown, certainly on Sundays. But today is a notable and happy exception. Hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, as in yeah, it's that's my quiet time. When Orgo has his nap time, it's my time to sort of do my own thing and read or relax or clean the kitchen, which is seems like a really boring Sunday thing to do, but has become now a part of my routine. And I'd be thinking about household chores even if I were lying on a hospital bed. So uh, it's strange how sort of living away from home and becoming independent and having to manage your own affairs is makes you so obsessed with household management and domesticity.
And lest you think that it's only Dhvani, and this is very sexist, that's not the case. I've done my little share of household chores. This is certainly not as much as perhaps I ought to, but certainly during the beginning of the lockdown, as in when all of us were really caught up and wondering what had hit us, as in I think household chores were a very central part of our day, and you're just wondering how the world has changed, and we were just thinking that as in about a decade back around this time, as if we were in Oxford, and in these beautiful surroundings and going to galleries and talking about cricket and art and thinking about Van Gogh and all his beautiful paintings, whether it be Starry Nights or Sunflowers. It was just beautiful. And now you've come to a situation where you hope that that kind of time returns. But currently we seem to be in the depths of it, and it might take a little while longer. But I do hope that we can go back to that time soon. And I don't want to go back to Oxford, actually, but I hope that that kind of time returns in Delhi. And I'd love to go back to Oxford for a holiday, but not for not to live. But yeah, that was a good time. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of time to do so much other than just work. And for example, as I used to play the piano, and I had the opportunity to do that so much more at Oxford than I do now. As in,
Yeah,
there's
like Dhwani's college, Magdalen College in Oxford, put a piano in her room. They put a piano in her room so that she could play. Like, it was unbelievable. Like, I was like, oh, why don't you give me some of that money so I could do something more useful with it than put a piano in her room. But yeah, there was a piano in her room. Yeah.
yeah, I was really lucky to have that. And while I have one here at home as well, I don't practice it as much as I should. So that's
And Magdalen College hasn't paid for that one.
well, my parents have paid for this one. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But no, I think that those were good days. But I think we sometimes we think back, what would have happened if we continued there, and I think Dhwani certainly perhaps was more interested at one point in staying there than I was. But I think that there's a lot that needs to be done here, and I think every time we do some work in terms of drafting a legislation, we see as to how much exclusion there is, uh, and that there is a lot of good that we can do. And Dhwani, I think, was working on the pesticides bill, uh, and where the work that I mean, a lot of lives depend on it, and I think there's a lot of good that we can do. No? As in, Dhwani, I don't know about that experience and how that was.
Yeah, no, I mean, I loved the life in Oxford. It was like, it was almost like while we were in an academic university town, we were like village people in a sense, given the sort of surroundings we were living in, the pastoral countryside, as in just being as in being one with nature and everything. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm very much a city person, and I very much wanted to come back to India and work on and do work that had an impact. So, like Orgo said, as in it's been a really uh, fulfilling experience to be able to understand how laws are made and how they impact people in the ground, as in on the ground. So with this pesticides bill, as in you want to understand what is it that farmers in the villages are thinking about when they want a pesticides law. How will they be able to relate to these complex legal words on paper, and how will that actually bring about a difference in their lives? And that's actually been a really informative experience for me. Yeah.
Superb. Well done, both of you. This was really good and really organic. You had me when you said dokla. I was like, oh, really? They substituted with dokla. Then she's like, fruits. And then suddenly Vikas is like, they've begun. I'm like, whoa, I totally missed that.
Good
Well
fun.
done. Super fun. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Very, very cool. So thank you for doing this so nicely. And in fact, I feel like it gave you the opportunity to tell us a lot more than our questions did. So I'm glad that this went down the way it did. So we'll move on to our next round now, which is where you legitimately are allowed to point a finger at each other. What you essentially have to do in this round is close your eyes with one hand, place your other hand right in front of the camera so we can see it clearly. You'll be asked a question. If you think it applies to you, point inward. If you think it applies to the other, point outward, right? It's fairly simple. So are you ready?
Yep.
We shall move on to point.
Cover your eyes.
Yeah, give us a moment. We're going to play the AV. Okay, ready to point a finger? Please cover your eyes. Orgo, no cheating.
Okay, I'm going to try.
All right, Vikas, go for it.
Right. Who is the better lawyer?
Oh, you guys.
Who is the morning person?
Nice.
Who is the sports person?
Is the
Sorry?
what person?
Sports. Who is the sporty one?
Well, if you're talking about who plays, then me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're talking about watching than me. So
Fair.
Chef.
sorry, can't hear you.
Who's the better cook? Who's the better liar? Who is more generous? Stop cheating, Argo.
Okay.
Right. Who is the Bollywood buff? Bollywood buff. Okay.
Me.
Oh, okay.
Who is more likely to miss a flight?
Oh.
Nice.
Right. Who is likely to lock themselves out of the house or the car?
Okay, who is the better listener? Okay. Who is more likely to leave a wet towel on the bed? Guys, who's more likely to gossip? Nice. I want to hang with you, Orgo. Who is more likely to wriggle out of socializing?
There's only one right answer to that one.
Correct. Who is more likely to go to prison? Nice. And the last one, who is more likely to grossly exaggerate the truth? Nice. Open your eyes. Very well done, both of you. I clearly want to hang out with Orgo because he gossips, he exaggerates the truth.
And he'll end up in
He's my
prison.
man.
And he'll end up
Be
in
my
prison.
lawyer, Tanisha, when I end up in prison.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't practice the law. I won't be able to do much. I'll go back to Dhvani for some policy drafting. That's
But
all I
you'll,
can
you'll
do.
use all that gray matter. That's all that matters.
Nice. High five.
Word,
Thank you for the
word
branding.
cake. Uh,
Okay, super. This was good. Did you both enjoy it? When you see the results, actually, it'll be more fun.
Very
That's
good.
true.
Yeah.
I
So
cheated
we-
on one or two. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Vikas caught you because your hand
Uh,
went like angular like
yeah,
that
like
at
that.
one point. So we knew. Okay, good. Well done. That has brought us to the end of Point a Finger. We are ready for our last segment now, which is called the interrogation.
Okay.
Shall we start? You have to be quick, honest, and no intellectualizing this one.
This is that coffee with Karan segment.
Sorry, what?
This is
Sorry,
that coffee
what?
Chai
with
with
Karan type
Sorry,
segment.
what?
This is Milky Chai with Tanisha session.
Milky chai with Tanisha. Well,
Or
Dhvani's not going to
oranges,
drink it.
or oranges and dokla with Idex Legal and the Grey Matter, if you like.
Great.
So, yeah.
That's what you
All
should
right.
rebrand. Yeah.
Shall we start?
Yeah.
Okay. So, sorry, the AV. Okay. Sorry about that, Neha. Okay. Your first question then. So we'll ask the question, one of you answer and then the other, right? So let's start with you, Orgo. If Mr. Rhodes met both of you, according to you, whom would he want to hang out with more and why?
He would hang out with me because he didn't really like women very much.
Nice. Dhvani, what do you think?
Yeah, he was a well-known misogynist, so that's the right answer. He didn't have women in his will, so women were not supposed to get the scholarship. It had to be amended by an act of parliament to allow women to get the Rhodes Scholarship in the late
Unbelievable.
1970s.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Okay, thanks. That's more knowledge. This is the problem when you hang out with these doctor type people, there's just they're throwing knowledge at you. It's never enough. Whatever you know is not enough. It's like that. Okay, next question. One thing you really admire about each other. So Orgo, you can go first. One thing you admire about Dhvani.
I admire the fact that she's uh, always set on doing the right thing, as in no matter how inconvenient that is, as in it can be really irritating at times, but it's also really admirable that she always knows what the right thing is and has the courage to go out and do it.
Phenomenal. Dhvani, how about you? What is it that you admire about him?
I really admire Orgo's confidence and belief in himself and in getting something done. So if there, he never approaches an issue by thinking, as in that this is impossible. He always, if he believes that there is something worth doing, he will find a way of doing that. So that's what I really appreciate.
Lovely. All right. If not Vidhi, what would you be doing today, Orgo?
I would have been litigating.
Litigating. And how about you, Dhvani?
I would have been a doctor.
You'd have been a doctor.
Yeah, like a proper doctor.
Like you would have gone back to study medicine after your PhD.
I think so, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, then. You've really got ability and capacity to study, yeah. When class 10
That's
was
only
done,
her. That's only her.
like when I was done with class 10, I thought I had achieved. Like, that's it. I didn't need to do more. And then you meet someone like Dhvani, you're like, oh man. Okay. Next question. What was your biggest hurdle when you set up Vidhi? If just in one line or a word.
The biggest hurdle was essentially to get people to believe in the fact that some 20-year-olds could really improve law in the country. And that I think was the biggest
Was
hurdle.
it? Yeah. Dhvani, what about you?
If I were being flippant, then convincing my parents to let me go to Delhi. And being serious, as in sort of, as Olga said, convincing other people that this was an idea worth having, but I'd say convincing our own peers that this was something that they could be a part of. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Your next question. If there were 3 legislations we can thank Vidhi for, help us name them.
Sorry, definitional question. Legislations that have passed or legislations that are in some-
Either. So bills, proposed bills, already legislation, just about anything.
So one is the data protection bill,
Right.
where we are. Number 2 is the insolvency and bankruptcy code.
Okay.
And number 3 is the Aadhaar Act. So this is just from
The caveat
speaking.
is that you don't have to thank Vidhi for these roles. These are, I mean, these bills. These are bills passed by Parliament, and Vidhi only provides
Of course.
legislative
Advisory.
research and drafting assistance.
Correct. Correct.
He's always
We've
doing the
noted
right
the disclaimer, Dhvani. Don't worry. We will also put it up in print on the video. Okay. Don't worry. No, no babus are coming after Vidhi. I promise you.
It's not the babus we're worried about.
Okay, fair. Dhvani, you want to answer that question in case you want to add on to what Orgo said?
No. As in, those are the
Those
three.
are largely the ones. Okay. All right. The next question we'll get Dhvani to answer first. So, Dhvani, tell us one thing about Orgo, which is a fairly well kept secret.
Oh. This is.
Get Argo to close his eyes again, so no kind of.
Okay, I'm not saying anything.
I don't know.
Like I'm actually a secret triathlete, that kind of thing.
When he makes, actually, I don't know. I don't think that's a secret. I was gonna say he makes very good mulled wine, but the whole office knows that. Yeah, I don't know.
We can go with the mulled wine one. It's fine.
Yeah.
No problem. Orgo, tell us a secret, fairly well kept secret about Dhvani.
It depends on well kept to whom, but I think to the wider world that she's a really accomplished pianist.
Oh, yes. Okay. You know, if we had a demonstration round, we would have asked you to play the piano for us. Okay, that's nice. All right. The next question then. Dhvani, would you rather be invisible or would you rather read minds?
Oh, read minds.
Read minds?
Yeah.
And why is that?
Because I'm just comparing the two. Being invisible doesn't seem like a particularly useful
Exciting proposition.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, fair. How about you, Orgo?
No, as in I've always liked Mr. India, so I've always wanted to be invisible. So I think I'll go with Mr.
So between yourselves, you managed to cover both skills, invisibility and reading of mind.
And I'm hoping that Bollywood answer both pointed to me.
No, it didn't actually. She also thinks she's a Bollywood buff. Okay. Next question for you both. Tell us one question you answered for the Rhodes Scholarship that you thought was like a real winner, like a deal clincher, respectively. So maybe Dhvani, you go first.
Yeah, I think toward the end of my interview, I was asked about the difference between Kathak and Western classical music because I used to do both. And, I gave some answer then about how they allow different degrees of, the performer's own interpretation. And I think that really struck a chord with everyone on the panel and I don't know if it was the clincher, but it was certainly something that it seemed like everyone appreciated.
Okay. Orgo, how about you?
Actually, I can say this because the day before the interview, as in we have this dinner, and I'd seen that there was this lady who was part of the panel. Now she's a friend of mine, Lavanya. And so I had read up what she was writing just before my interview, and it was something about environmental law that she had written, that it was not a question of development, but it was really just a question of environment. So when her first question in the interview to me was and this was just in the aftermath of one of these jamborees that these environmental lawyers keep having in these fancy places in the world. I think it was Bali or something that time. And she said, "What do you think about Bali?" And my answer was that it depends on whether you think of the environment as a question of development or you think of it as a question of protection. So I could see her nodding her head, and I realized that yes, bingo.
Wow, well done. Benefits of doing your research well. Okay, nice. Moving on to your next question. Orgo, which is your most visited website or social media application?
My most visited website, this is a difficult one because actually I'm not much on social media, but perhaps the website that I visit the most is goal.com. As in, this is just about on football, as in just to keep up with football.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scores. All right. And how about you, Dhvani?
So I'm not on any social media. So to get my news, I go to a news website. So it's The Guardian, I think. That's
The Guardian you like? Okay. Yeah. Nice. All right. The one thing about you that people think is true, but is absolutely not. Orgo, you go first.
that people think is true, but is absolutely not true. Uh, I think that yeah, I think people think that I'm very go-getting, and I think that's not how I see it at all. And I wouldn't call myself go-getting at
A
all.
go-getter. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Dhvani, you?
Yeah, perhaps that I'm a very academic person. And I'm really not. As in, I can be good at academia, but my temperament is not an academic one. I don't. It's not. I'm not an intellectual. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. The next question. An incident that makes you go, something you did that makes you go, what was I thinking? Or go, you go first.
Uh, I don't know. I think the easy answer is, well, marriage. No, no, not at all. Not at all, not at all, not at all. But that's just to say, to buy some time. So, Dhwani, if you have an answer, I'll have one by the time you finish.
Moving to Delhi.
Moving to
Hmm.
Delhi.
Yeah.
Orgo, you may not have a home tonight, so just call a few friends in Delhi and figure alternate accommodation.
Moving to another home in Delhi.
Okay. Do you have an answer though?
I'll come back to it.
Okay, no problem. All right. The last question for this round. Two things you've had to unlearn in 2020 each. So, Dhvani, you want to go first?
Unlearn. Sort of. I don't know. I think it's easier to say what I've learned, but
No,
okay,
that's
I'll
fine
try
too.
to,
That's fine too.
unlearn.
So, tell us what you've learned. No problem.
As in trying to, and I don't know if I've been successful at it, but trying to develop a balance between work at home and as in domesticity versus your professional life, and developing a routine, as in that's been important. And the other thing is sort of maybe staying in touch more with people, as in that's something, as in I've had to unlearn being taking friendships for granted, and sort of not being as proactive and engaged, reaching out to people as I used to. And I think this period has sort of taught me the importance of maintaining those relationships. Yeah.
Fair.
And I think for
And
me, as far as unlearning is concerned, I think I've had to unlearn the ways I've done legal research, to be very honest, because I haven't done legal research for a while. For the last 3 or 4 years, as in just the basic. When I mean legal research, just the basic finding cases on SEC type, Manupatra type things. I haven't done it in a while. As in, there have been some very diligent and bright people who've helped me out with it. But during the lockdown, given the fact that there has been nobody around me, I think I had to get to that again, and the old ways of doing it circa 2008 were not good enough. So I've had to unlearn and learn again, and boy, it's become a bit harder. As in, when in our time SCC was really simple, you had to type in some words and hope for the best. But I think now it's become very sophisticated, and so so I've had to unlearn that and learn this. And in terms of what was I thinking, as in I think there is as in I think there are a number of things that but very simply, one of the things that I always feel is in terms of uh, not litigating also, in some shape or form, that what was I thinking in not keeping litigation on as a career option as well. So, but yeah, but no real regrets. Yeah.
okay. Thank you. Thanks, both of you. This was fun. It brings us to the end of the interrogation round, and overall lets you now leave. So
We're
thank
going
you
to bring
both.
on, Tanisha, we're going to bring on a special guest again, because we've
Okay.
got Rajiv who's raised his hands. So we're going to bring him on to ask a question or make a point to Vani and Argo.
Sure.
So Ria, can you bring Rajiv on, please? Hi, Rajiv.
Good evening, Mr.
Hi,
Lokesh.
hi.
Hello.
Hi, I've been hearing you guys, very fascinating. And Dhvani, you have my condolences to begin with. Argo, while everybody thinks he's all smiley and football-y and all of that stuff, he's a guy who sucks at a lemon every morning. Dhvani confirmed that. So he was an anchor on one of these storytelling sessions with a judge, Justice Sri Krishna, no less, a sitting Chief Justice, two senior advocates, and me, the baby. And I actually had after I told my story and my side of the argument, I actually had the judge say that you will win in front of me if you have made that argument, Rajiv. And there was this Argo sitting there sucking at his lemon as if, what the hell is this guy all about? So Dhvani, this is for you.
Okay.
Since Argo believes in the Karam theory, the karma theory, every time he shouts at you, you just tell him a simple thing, that I'm the worst wife in the world. He says, worst! Then you say, listen, you're the best husband. He won't know what the hell hit him. Because then tell him that in your last life, you did terrible deeds. You got me. I did very good deeds. I got you. How could you scold the fruit? That'll fix him, this lemon sucker.
Yeah.
Hi, Argo.
Hi.
I thought I'll get you.
I'd love to swap my garment with yours. I think that would add a lot of character.
I'm fighting a big court matter with one of my partners, so I dress like a tiger now.
I don't think you have to dress like one to be one.
I'm actually sitting in the mountains. Let me show you my little fireplace.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Now I definitely want to swap more than the garment with you. Can we swap places?
So come up to Kasoli, Dhvani. Lovely meeting you.
You too. Thank you.
And come up to Kasoli. We had spent some time here. So I'm here for a bit with my legal team and having lots of fun.
Great.
I'm making them play cricket for the time being.
Lovely. Thanks.
All the best, my dears.
Thank
and God bless you both. We'll meet up in Delhi soon.
Look forward to it.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Rajiv.
Right.
Sir, you're still on camera. Okay, then. Setting in a very casual tone there.
I'm not in court.
Okay. Do we have any questions that we want to take for Argo and Dhvani?
I think there was one question right from the beginning, so I'll just
Correct.
quickly answer that about funding structure at Vidhi.
Sure.
But I think we decided very early on and that we wanted to do this as a not-for-profit. And so we decided to set up a Section 25 company. And we realized with our first set of funders that this was an idea whose time had come, that better governance requires better laws is a belief that was widely shared in society. So once we got that and we were clear on that, and that's when we decided that, like all good things, we would have to commit to it full time. And so like the questioner asks, I think that if you believe in an idea, I think that it's essential that you back it up and get other people to believe in you. And once they've done that, it's time to commit to it fully.
Fair. Thank you for answering that. It has been lovely talking to the both of you. Thank you both for agreeing to do this. We know that you both are, one, fairly busy, and two, fairly smart to want to play games like this. So we're honored that you played Word Sneak and Coffee with Karan and some version of it with us. Thanks a lot. It's been a lot of fun, and we look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tanisha. Thanks, because it was a real pleasure. Real pleasure. Bye.
Bye. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for watching. We will catch you on our episode 4, but it's not happening the coming weekend because of Diwali. So we will be back on the 22nd with a very interesting mother-daughter duo. So stay tuned then.